Done.
Got it?
Okay, yep.
Okay. All right, good. So we have two Shonigs with us, which is very nice. And we'll give it a couple minutes to see what's going on and if other people are joining. I think I saw Natalie beforehand. I thought I saw Natalie Weinberg, but she might have come and gone. I'm not sure. Anybody have anything interesting that's happening recently? Hello, it's Jerry. He's connecting. My husband is going to join us. Oh, he's sitting in the background.
I banished my husband.
Really?
It would make me nervous.
Oh, okay.
Truth be told.
I want to say a couple of things in that right now everybody is not on mute, but if we find that there's a lot of noise coming from your location, we will mute you. And if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. Also, if you have any questions, I'd like to suggest that we raise hands and you'll be called upon, I promise, so that we're not speaking over each other.
Right.
And to give people the courtesy of having their say.
Right. And that would be appreciative because I do want to make this interactive and to have people to speak up and give us some of the ideas that they're working on. So
Can
that would be
everybody
great.
hear me?
Oh, good. Now we see Lorraine's whole face.
Oh,
That's good.
Hey, Lorraine.
All of you.
Hey.
This is nice. And we see Jerry Frank. I haven't met Jerry in person, but it's nice to see you. And it looks
Yeah.
like over in the corner there, I just saw Alan Bolotsky walk by. I think it is Alan Bolotsky. Hi, Alan. Welcome. Nice to see you.
How's
So anybody
everybody?
have any interesting stories this week?
I
No?
made the
Right?
best soup.
No.
Okay, I always make chicken soup, but I learned this from a chef. If you make a roast or you make a chicken, you use what's left in the pan, you know, all the drippings and everything. So I've been doing that, and this
Well, then I'm
last
coming to your house.
that soup just came out so amazing. I used the drippings and just a little bit of the awesome, you know, the awesome with the
What is
What-
awesome? Is awesome an ingredient?
It's the
a kosher,
like
it's like a
consomme.
kosher bouillon.
Yeah.
Lorraine,
I
I'm
just
coming
used
to
one
your-
heaping teaspoon of awesome and all the drippings, and it's the best soup I ever made. I had to make a double recipe of canadles to go with it.
Oh, yum.
So try that.
Lorraine,
Yeah.
I'm coming to
Don't
your
just
house.
wash your pan after you make a roast or a chicken or anything you do in the oven. Really add water to it, get all the drippings, and save it for your next soup. You'll be amazed.
So did you use the bones too?
Yeah, well, naturally, if I take
Yeah,
it
the
off
bones
before I
make the
serve,
soup.
you know, like I take Lenny's portion off the bone, so then it becomes like bone broth, and I just keep using that.
Nice.
And I couldn't stop eating it. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I ordered food from Wardsbury Farm, and you can put in an order there, and they make it. You know, you go and pick it up, and you wait outside, and they bring it out to your car, and got this huge, humongous butternut squash. So I made a delicious butternut squash soup with that, and that was
That's
really
very
good.
nice.
Yeah, but some of
Yeah.
the pieces. So when you're hungry later on, you say, "Oh, there it is." More people. Hello, welcome.
Hi,
Hello,
Jenny.
Nancy. Hi.
Welcome. Happy birthday, Nancy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
so
Ah.
It was yesterday, right?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
I saw you had like 3 million birthday wishes on Facebook.
Yeah.
Must
It
take
was
it on.
amazing. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
So,
Happy
thank you.
belated birthday.
Thank you.
So we're 5 minutes in. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit of what is coming up before we go into today. We'll have a little chit chat amongst ourselves beforehand. But I wanted to tell you that we have May all filled up, our May program. So next week we have Judy Hochberg. Raise your hand. Well, Judy just left the screen, but Judy Hochberg is going to do some pointers. She's a fabulous photographer and artist, and she's going to do some pointers on photography. So as we get outside a little bit, and take walks. My husband and I just came back from a nice walk. As you take walks outside, maybe bring your camera or your phone with you, and let's take some pictures, something to do in this time, and enjoy the spring as much as we can. So that is next week. And then the following week, Sandy Evans, who is a wonderful singer. I'm sure you've heard her sing at the temple a couple of times. It's Sam Evans' mother. She's going to do a solo concert for us, which should be really nice. And then the following week, which is May 28th, that is the night of the beginning of Shavuot. And we actually have a treat in that Michelle Langmead is going to do a hands-on, everybody get your ingredients. We're going to be making apple Bavarian torte cheesecake. Apple Bavarian cheesecake torte. It's a thin crust bottom with a little bit of cheesecake stuffing inside, and then apples and into a torte. We're all going to make it together in honor of Shavuot.
Well, don't say everybody, because I won't make it.
Well, you can watch. It's like watching, it's like a chef program on TV, because we all know Michelle is a great baker and cook. And so we're going to do this in honor of Shavuot. And the rabbi has asked that anybody who makes one of these, if you don't eat it before the program that night, that you bring it to the program and show everybody your creation. So that's what we have through the month of May. And I'm going to be working on June soon, so we can have a wonderful get-together every week. And that's pretty exciting. So anybody else have news they want to share or talk about? Anything?
I was on the Zoom earlier on this afternoon with the people from Walpole, from the Walpole Senior Center. So they had a policeman who was talking about the COVID-19 disease, and then after his talk, and then he was allowing for questions and everything. So I thought that was kind of interesting, what he had to say, and how different people are using masks, and that it's required now when you go outside that you have to use a mask and everything.
Right. I want to say that I found there was a little article in yesterday's Globe. And so I looked it up, and everybody can get to YouTube. So if you have a smart TV, you can go to, does everybody know how to get to YouTube on the TV? Anybody not know?
I don't, not on the TV.
If you go to, like I have Comcast, so I go to, there's a Comcast Xfinity button, and it shows you all the things that you can do, and you go to, what is it called, where you can get to Netflix and
I have the Files program.
anyhow, if you go on,
I don't have Xfinity. I have Files.
So if you go on YouTube, you can get it through your computer, or you can get it on your TV, and you go to YouTube. Boston Symphony Orchestra, together with the Boston Pops, put on a concert called Summon the Heroes.
Right.
And it's only about 10 minutes long or so. But it's
Beautiful.
phenomenal, and it's about 80 artists, each playing in their own homes, and then they had somebody splice it all together, and they even have John Williams on it. Has anybody seen it?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so John Williams, who wrote the piece, he wrote it for the Olympics years ago. He is on the piano, and he speaks at the beginning, and then they have the members of symphony and pops playing together, and it's really wonderful. So I would highly recommend that. When you're on that and that's over, then the New York Philharmonic also has something like that. It's, what was it, Mark? It was Bolero. So, you know, that was not as exciting, but.
You can also see, and this is kind of a segue into the things that we'll be talking about. I believe for Sondheim, his 90th birthday, you can catch that program on YouTube as well, because, you know, he's a phenomenal lyricist and playwright, and they did a tribute to him a few weeks ago, and you can capture that on YouTube, and that's supposed to be haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's a great program.
Right. Also, every Friday, Andrew Lloyd Webber, for 48 hours. Has anybody seen the performances? They put on YouTube, you can catch an Andrew Lloyd Webber performance. So far I have seen Phantom of the Opera, and Jesus Christ Superstar. And there was a melange of different performances, like highlights, the 25th anniversary of his being on Broadway. So I don't know what it is tonight. It's good for 48 hours, but excuse me, what is it? Oh, tomorrow night. But if you have an opportunity, go on YouTube, look up Andrew Lloyd Webber. The performance is called The Show Must Go On. I have my husband in the background giving me all the stuff because my memory's shot. The Show Must Go On. And I would highly recommend it as an entertaining way to spend part of your evening. So anybody else want to bring us any greetings or tell us something new in their lives?
I like your background.
Thank you. It's Cookie Monster and my granddaughter.
Ah,
I found a way to make myself, I was saying before, a sort of blue screen so I can put some pictures up. Otherwise, I can't do it on my computer. All right, so we are going.
there's also a way that you can do this. The same way I'm doing it through the Zoom. That if you go down there at the very bottom, and if you go into that video thing, and right next to it there's an arrow, and if you click on that arrow, and it'll bring up, where you can change your background. The same way I have. It looks like the San Francisco Bridge is in the there in the background, and
Thank you.
and a body of water.
Thank you. My computer can't do that. It's
Okay.
whether it's too old or something, and so that's why I had to do this. Anyhow, it is a great pleasure that I want to introduce today's speaker, and it's Roberta Guez. Roberta, wave your hand. And Roberta is a licensed social worker. And Roberta has, I'm going to give you a little some of the highlights from her resume. She has worked in innovative and results-oriented behavioral health care as a leader in both public and private sector. She is skilled at fostering and encouraging cultural diversity. And she has also, very interestingly, modeled principles of ethical leadership. So her background is that she is the site director for Corrigan Mental Health Center in Fall River. And she has been you're not currently, are you?
No, retired from that.
And she has been the COO of Taunton State Hospital and the program director of psychiatry at Quincy Medical Center and the director of geriatric services at the Heritage Health Systems, which is currently called the Cambridge Health Alliance. Currently, since she's retired, she has been consulting in behavioral development and regulatory compliance and teaching at Bridgewater State University Graduate School of Social Work. So no slouch there. We are really, really happy to have her as one of our members at B'nai Tikvah, and she's going to talk to us about coping. So I turn it over to you, Roberta. And once again, I just want to remind everybody that we may end up, if there's a lot of noise, we may end up muting you, and then you'll raise your hand if you have questions.
Great. So first of all, thank you, Debbie. Thanks, Cindy, for co-hosting. Thank you, all members of B'nai Tikvah, for inviting me. I feel honored and delighted. I hope it kind of, meets a need here. This is kind of an informal discussion, and we've already had a great segue into it in terms of what people are doing, trying different soups, learning different skills. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and put that in a context. Really just wanted to, and I also want to make this interactive. So bear with me as I do a little bit of background and a presentation, and then I really want to open it up to you. And some of you have already shared some of your ideas. My kids laugh at my Boston accent. I try very hard not to sound too Bostonian. So I really want to hear from all of you about what you're doing, and it sounds like you're doing great. But first of all, I want to begin by saying, I think it's important to capture, and you've heard so much of this, but I needed to start somewhere with a few words about what an unprecedented journey we're on. And just look at all of us. I really think that we are on a journey, and it's probably unlike any adventure we've ever been on. And I'm not sure adventure is the right word, but I couldn't come up with anything different. But in some sense, it is an adventure. There's no map, there's no guidelines, there's no protocols, there's no credible science yet. There's no cure, there's no vaccine, no real recent history about how this is all going to end. The damage to one's physical health, well, you all know about that. We see it in the news reports every day. But what we're not, and we're just beginning to get a grasp of, certainly from mental health professionals, is the damage to one's psyche. You know, people are feeling anxious and people are feeling worried. And, you know, the uncertainty of it all we all react to it very differently. You know, it looks like a lot of us here, certainly like myself, we're retired. But, you know, so many people are struggling with economic concerns, loss of livelihoods, our comforting rituals, and all our structures are fractured. So we're, you know, trying to recreate that. I like to say, to give an analogy, it's like we're on a spaceship hurtling through space to an unknown destination. Even the planet we're going to is unknown, with only rudimentary controls flying the ship, and we don't even know who that captain is in charge. Some have referred to this as the Twilight Zone, and I really think that that's an apt description. That's what I really feel like. We're just passing through the Twilight Zone. So I'm a mental health professional, so I'm trying not to make this sound too mental healthy, so forgive me, but you know, that's where I have to begin. I find that using a context and a framework of seeing this as some kind of trauma, in some ways we're all grieving, you know, in certain respects, you know, we're grieving for the things that we used to do. We're grieving from the lack of context. We're grieving for some people who have passed on as a result of the pandemic, and people have passed on not from the pandemic, but it's just part of what's been going on in life. And using the lens of trauma-informed care, trauma, what it does is it's the way one, you know, trauma is something that happens to you, and how you cope with it is kind of sets the tone. So some people who've had past trauma, this was going to influence how they're going to deal with this current situation. Trauma determines how you're going to function now, how you're going to deal with the stresses, and how you're going to do it in the future. And some people have had past trauma, like, you know, PTSD, like we know our soldiers, some of our soldiers have. This is going to have a resurgence of some of those feelings again, because we're in a traumatic situation. So what this does is it kind of changes how we handle stress. Now, the opposite side of trauma, and how do you deal with trauma, you try to be resilient. You want to be able to bounce back. And we all want to be in the resilient camp. We want to be in the camp that was able to say, you know what I did during the pandemic? I made the greatest chicken soup, or I, you know, did something wonderful in my house. We want to all be able to do that. You know, fill in the blanks. You know, you can all kind of figure out what you'd be able to say to your kids, and, you know, even our kids and our grandkids are going to be able to say what they did during the pandemic. It's going to be a really remarkable time for us to look back on. So everybody's trying to fill in what to do. I was, you know, this week I was driving down to Walmart's in Route 1 in Walpole. I'll tell you more about why I'm driving down there to begin with. But I couldn't help be struck by, here I am driving on Route 1, and all those strip malls, every single the parking lot is empty. The Walpole Mall is empty. Every little strip mall is empty. The only places where it was filled was the Big Y, that parking lot was filled. Obviously Walmart, that parking lot was filled. And Home Depot, no room at the inn. So what does that tell you? Why are people going to Home Depot? They're probably doing all those do-it-yourself projects, you know, gardening, and everybody's kind of get busy with things that they can do around the house. So this is on a Monday at noon, you know, not even on a Sunday. I was told that it was even impossible to get to Home Depot Mall. So people are doing a lot of things, and that's a really good thing, but that may not suit everybody. Everybody's got a different way of coping, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about. Now, there's some anecdotal evidence from, you know, there's no studies yet, so I'm pulling from the air about some of the articles that I've read, is that, you know, some senior citizens actually are doing not terribly in this period. And why is that? Why are older adults, you know, not languishing? And I think because a lot of us have learned some kind of self-resilience skills. Some people have gone through difficult times. You know, I didn't live through the Depression, but I'm certainly a child of parents who lived through the Depression and parents who lived through World War II, and that kind of framed who I am as a person and how that shaped me. So a lot of older adults have developed self-reliance abilities, and they're managing okay. You know, some people have lost family and friends, and they've learned how to develop the resiliency into that life. You know, probably those folks are in good health. Probably those folks don't have economic worries, but they're, you know, they're doing all away, which is just another way of saying there are myriad ways of coping. This is not a one size fits all. So the one thing that it's important to kind of look at is how to stay optimistic, you know, and not Pollyannish optimistic, but how to build optimism into your life in these times. There's a couple of articles that seem to resonate with me. One was called How to Stay Optimistic When Everything Seems Wrong. This just absolutely seems to be the right thing to read. And it quoted a researcher, Sarah Kate McGowan of the Geffen School of Medicine from the University of LA Medical School. And she said that, you know, she directs her patients to schedule pleasurable activities during the day, setting specific times for walking, setting a specific time for calling on a friend, having video chats, this kind of activity, you know, schedule your day with doing things. This is a common treatment for keeping people out of depression, but also a very helpful technique. Just keep yourself resilient, keep yourself on the right path. You know, optimism isn't about ignoring negative feelings. We all have those negative feelings, but it's more about trying to be hopeful about the future, how to deal with uncertainty. And that's really very, very painful. You know, not knowing what's going to happen. We don't know the rest of the story. That's what's really scary. So, you know, optimism can help us cope with, you know, trauma and with whatever we're going through. And coping skills is another way of, you know, moving that along. So there are a few worthwhile takeaways. One is find pleasure in small things. Again, I'm going to refer to what Lorraine said. I mean, I think it was a great thing, you know, making a soup that really was good, you know, making a cake that was really, really delicious, trying something to find some pleasure in some of the small things. This is great pleasure. You know, for me, when I get calls from my kids, doesn't matter what I'm doing, if there's a call and there's a baby on the other end, that's going to take precedent, and that's what I'm going to do. Also, it's important, and I'm sure you're all doing that, is to limit your news intake. You know, there's only so much news, there's only so much information. It's important to kind of figure out how much you can digest and how much you can't digest and step away from that. You know, we all need extra care and nurturing, and it's important also to take note that we are going to have moments of sadness. You know, I'm a person that can cry during very well-made and moving commercials. I mean, I don't know, I'm just that kind of a person. And yesterday, when they showed on TV, I think it was the F-16 flyover over Boston, because yesterday is Nurses Day, and they were acknowledging all the healthcare professional and all the nurses. When I just saw that, and I didn't see it in real life, I saw it on TV, I just started to sob. I just teared up. I just thought that was so moving. Is anything wrong with me? I mean, maybe, but maybe not. I just think that that's very normal for us to have a whole range of feeling. It's all on the arc of the spectrum of what's normal around this time. And if you feel more tearful or more sad or a little bit more tender, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just recognize it, though. The second thing to take away is that mundane moments are important, kind of like what I said before. You know, with not a whole lot of options on how to spend your time during quarantine, it's important to, you know, spend time and think about and get into the mundane activities. For those of you that got into meditation or yoga, it has to do with mindfulness. And mindfulness talks about being present. In other words, my mind, and I'm terrible for mindfulness, but my mind is already, you know, figuring out what I'm going to do with this hour and this hour. My whole life has been a spreadsheet. I mean, I've always had spreadsheets, so I know what I'm doing every hour of the day. I'm a little bit obsessive about that. But mindfulness tells you to just kind of take the moment and be in that moment and enjoy that moment. Be focused on what you're doing now. Be focused on that cup of tea, whatever you're eating, and let it soothe you. And that's a good way to kind of just take a step back. It's another coping mechanism. They found that, in a recent study, researchers highlighted the value of small everyday activities, asking participants to document daily habits, such as which songs they listened to or what updates they shared on Facebook. And months later, when they went back to these same subjects and they looked at these documented moments, they were more curious and interested in those activities than they thought they would be. We tend to enjoy the mundane in hindsight. What we need to do is to enjoy it when it's going on. Look for what matters to you most and then process events through that lens. So just kind of, try to use the things that give you a little bit of strength. Look for a heightened sense of purpose, volunteering, having compassion, reconnecting with ourselves and our positive attitudes. And again, as I said before, learning how to tolerate uncertainty. That's a very hard and challenging thing. All of us like to just have some endpoint, some certainty. We want to know what's going to happen. This is a time that we just really don't know. Nobody has built this bridge. Nobody knows what's on the other side of the bridge. So, what are the things that we can be doing to help deal with the anxiety? And again, our goal for this time is learning how to deal and to tolerate the uncertainty. So I'm going to use myself as an example, and I think I've already alluded to some things. The things that I do for coping mechanisms is clutching to the video chats for my kids. I have 2 new grandkids, I'm happy to say. I have a grandson, 6 months old, who's in San Diego. Luckily, I was able to see him in February. And I have a granddaughter, Somerset, who was born March 20th. Now, I just want to talk about, anxiety. My granddaughter was born at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan on March 20th. So it was the height of the pandemic and at the epicenter of the pandemic at a hospital that had nurses dying every single day there, from the virus. And my granddaughter inhaled meconium and she had to be in the NICU for 7 days. So my daughter had to traverse from her apartment to the hospital for 7 days back and forth. Needless to say, anxiety with a capital A underlined in bold was what my life was. It was like one of the worst weeks of my life. I'm happy to report that the baby's okay, my daughter's okay, and they survived that experience. But, it was a very, very tough week, to negotiate that. So now being able to see her and see her on video chats, that's the highlight of my day and for coping. I've also started to make, Lorraine talked about, cooking. We're going to be learning how to make, maybe some cheesecake. So I, at the beginning part of the pandemic, when it looked like, we needed to stock up on things. So I'm not a bread eater, but decidedly, I just felt like, oh my God, the sky is falling and I need to have bread in the house. And, fresh bread may be hard to get. So I'm going to get some yeast. Well, yeast went the way of toilet paper. It's like gold. You cannot find yeast in probably any supermarket. I looked online, I looked at Amazon.com. It became a mission to find yeast. I could not find yeast anywhere, did not exist. So I went to the next best thing. I went to sourdough starter. I have a friend who's a biochemist and he talked about all the sourdough. And of course, I thought this was like crazy business, but since I couldn't find yeast and I'm desperate to have bread, which I never eat, but I'm desperate to have bread. So I decided to start on sourdough starter. So what basically this is, it's fermenting flour and water. You create yeast from the air. In my typical obsessive style, I must have looked at, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 20 different YouTube videos on how to make sourdough. And by the way, one of the most researched Google searches for the state of Massachusetts is how to make bread. So I'm not the only nutcase out there. So, and I want to show you, this is what my sourdough starts. So the blue elastic, I don't know if you can see it, shows where it was this morning, and it's already expanding.
Oh.
In 4 more days, I can start to make bread. This is my second attempt. So my first attempt, what can I say? As you can see, it's a putski. You have to be totally committed to this. You have to feed it. It's like having an expensive pet. If anyone wants advice offline, I'll tell you all about it. So my first attempt was I made a babki. It was a disaster. It tasted good, but it became a babki cookie, you know, hard as a rock. My second attempt was pancakes. They were success, but who can screw up pancakes? But they were very, very good, I will say that. My third attempt at actual real sourdough, I will say I'll give myself a D. It was very delicious, very doughy. You know, with toast, it was okay. I will try it again, but it wasn't exactly an A+ kind of deal. But I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I've become part of the cult. I am going to solve this issue of the sourdough, and check back with me. I will tell you how it went. The other thing that I'm doing again, and I'll move on so people can talk, is I'm kind of a yoga freak. So I found yoga online. And there are a million different yogas. One that I like is called Yoga with Adrienne. She has all different levels, but you can find anything on YouTube. Anything at all. You know, because the scary thing about YouTube is that we looked at how to make a mask out of YouTube. Actually, my husband did, because he's better at that than I am. So now every time I go to YouTube, it shows me how to make masks. So, you know, if you look up anything, or, you know, you look at how to make sourdough on YouTube, they'll show you 50 million other sourdough kind of YouTube experiments. And the last thing that I'm doing, and again, it shows you how crazy I am, I've been trying to avoid supermarkets. So I've tried to snag, and the word is snag, delivery times from all the different supermarkets. So I'm not a great sleeper. So, you know, I've got up at 3 in the morning, or I've stayed up till midnight. You know, if I'm not up at 5 in the morning. So I have been successful. I have snagged a couple of times from Whole Foods. I got something from Wegmans at 5 o'clock this morning. Now, mind you, I don't think I need anything in the house, not a thing. I mean, I could be in the pandemic for a month and I would be fine. But if I got this delivery time at Wegmans, who am I to turn it down? So it's 7 o'clock tonight. I'm going to go pick up my curbside pickup at Wegmans, and I am all set. So it's like a Dungeons and Dragons game. That is my next kind of coping mechanism, is trying to find a time so I can snag this. So this is what I do. So what else can you do? There are a whole bunch of online courses. There's a website called CourseHorse. It originally started as various courses that you can take in LA, and started in New York City and in Boston. But now, of course, it's all online. So I look to see what they're offering online, and they're very reasonable. They're like $10 a course. I mean, you know, it's like a one-shot deal. One is called Knife Skills. I assume it's for cooking. I don't know what else you'd be doing with knife, but that was the name of it. The other one is called Virtual Wine Tasting 101. I guess you bring your own wine. Virtual Trivia, Virtual Croissant Making, Meditation Self-Care, Short Story Workshop, and Brunch at Home. Those are about 10 of the 20 different options. So you can look online, sit in front of your screen, and just go to town with it. So the list is endless. So that's, I'm going to take a step back and say those are some kinds of coping mechanisms. Now, one thing before I open it up to all of you, I do want to say that it's important to not be overwhelmed. There are so many choices about coping. There are so many things that you can do that you can beat yourself up and say, I need to do this, look at all these things, and, you know, I've become a slug and I'm not doing any of that. It's important not to, one, be overwhelmed by the choices, and two, not to feel like a failure if you're not doing any of these things. You know, this may be a time for self-care to just take a step back. You know, when would there be another time like this when you can binge watch on TV and not feel guilty? If you don't do it now, then when? And if you want to make it like, you know, a little bit more intellectual or a little bit more, you know, viable, you can have a conversation with your friends and to say, I saw this show, and you can share some of the things that you've seen in order to find some intellectual content, you know, content out of it. But by all means, you know, find things that give you satisfaction, peace, allow you to tune out, allow you to relax, allow you to be stimulated. All of that is fine too. And if you can find something productive and figure out a way to install your Nest doorbell, go for it. But if you don't install the Nest doorbell, don't beat yourself up. So what are you guys doing? And what's worked? And are you trying anything new?
Can you repeat the name of that website, the site?
Sure. It's one word. It's called Course. C-O-U-R-S-E, Horse, H-O-R-S-E, CourseHorse.
And that's on YouTube?
No, that's just, you go on the, like, just put coursehut.com and it will come up. And it will, every day they say, and here's a new course for you. I'm like, oh, good, something else for me to do.
What's the
Something
word?
else to say, oh, I should be doing this.
Course what?
Horse,
Horse.
like a horse, like,
Like giddy up horse.
Giddy up
Horse.
horse.
R-S-E,
Right.
horse.
Horse.
Got it.
A horse.
So is anyone doing anything outside of their comfort zone, or is anything doing something inside their comfort zone that's giving them more comfort?
And can people please raise your hand before you
Cindy's
speak
gonna
so
write.
that we get everybody? Neely,
Well, I started playing Mahjong online. I've never done something like that before.
Wow.
So,
How do you do that?
awesome.
Yeah, how do you do that? How do you do that?
Oh, it's on the screen, and you have to sign up, and it's free for the first 2 weeks. You can either play with a computer or you can play with your friends.
Nice. How about Lorraine? You had your hand up.
I just sometimes, you're just going all day and it's hard to unwind. So under my pillow every night, I put my tablet and I play Spider Solitaire and Hearts. And it's like taking a sleeping pill. It puts me right to sleep.
Nice. Who else had their hand up? Jerry.
Debbie, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Roberta, I just want to tell you, see, I happen to think very differently about this COVID-19 disease. And I myself do not believe that it started in Wuhan, China. But what I want to say is, and I'm not going to get into how I believe, because the way I believe is very different. But what I want to say is that I like the way you started your talk, because, it's sort of the way I believe a little bit about being on a ship and we don't know where we're going. We don't know who the captain is, and that we're just floating out there and just going. That I like I like the way you had started your talk, and that it's very unique, because it seems to me like we're all together, all on one ship, and we're all going to the same place, but we don't know where we're going. We don't know who the captain is.
Right.
So it was very unique just to listen to somebody else talking about how I believe, but I don't want to get into that.
Right.
Then
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
I'm going to confuse everybody.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else? Debbie?
So I think I've talked about it beforehand, but I have been doing weekly cooking with my grandkids. Now, I am not known for being a great chef, and it's not really a passion of mine, but I've been finding myself cooking a lot lately, and they're not necessarily recipes I know by heart. Sometimes it's a new recipe to me that last night I made chicken, it was chicken fried rice with the grandkids. I went on Pinterest and found the recipe, and we go on what do you call it, FaceTime. And my daughter-in-law and my son are thrilled because that provides them with dinner they don't have to make. And the different grandkids are cooking with me. And that's something that's really great. Another thing, because as Roberta talks about OCD, sort of, not OCD, but things that we're obsessed about, I probably dusted the top of things. Haven't been dusted in 20, well, not 20, maybe 15 years. I took a ladder, and I felt like I accomplished something, and I went to stood at the top of the ladder and dusted the top of things, and that was an accomplishment, something I don't usually do.
Yep. I had a plan to do something like that, but have yet not got to it.
Nancy Swartz. Oh, Nancy, hold on. Oh,
I just did.
okay, great.
Okay, thanks. The question was, how are we coping? What are we doing to cope in other ways? So I've been journaling every day in terms of what I'm going through, and that really helps to ground me.
Nice.
And I'm putting my fears, my concerns, but also my hopes for the future. So It's all in there in a journal.
Very
Awesome.
good. And
That's
that's a very important, recognizable tool in a variety of situations, is journaling. It's very, very, very
Right.
helpful.
Awesome. Debbie?
I think that's so interesting because I often think of doing it, thinking that someday there's going to be somebody looking for a time capsule. You know, years from now, what we're going through now, it's so hard to describe it.
Right.
And maybe if you do it day by day, but you know, 50 years from now, this is going to be something in the history books. And people are going to say, how did people feel then? What was going
Right.
on? You know,
Right.
what,
And,
and I
and
think it's so important to have somebody doing that. It's a great thing. I don't know, I haven't brought myself to do it, but I think it's very valuable.
it is a
I do
commitment to
too.
do it, because once you do
do
it
too.
and then you do it again and then you do it again and you feel like, well, I didn't do it yet today and I want to do it. And I can go back, I'm sure I haven't yet, but I know that my days are going to be like this. Some days I'm here and some days I'm here, but it's there on paper, and it does help to ground me.
Right.
Lillian, I'm
Alan
sorry.
wants to get his hand up, I know.
Yeah, Lillian, yep. Lillian
Hi,
has her hand up.
I have my
Go ahead.
I have my hand up.
Yep.
And I've got just a different perspective on it because I'm still working full time. I work for a bank, so we're still open, but we can't go to the office anymore. I've been working at home since mid-March, and I'd only been working before like 2 days at home, 3 days in the office. So now I had to switch to a full 5 days at home, and which meant I had to like rearrange my den, to have a workspace that is comfortable for a week. So I've had to, so I've been rearranging furniture and stuff, and just timing of when I go grocery shopping, because I work where I work in Quincy. There's a Stop and Shop next door, so I would just stop by on my way home to pick up some groceries. And now it's like it has to be a special trip, and you have to plan it in advance and everything. And it's odd because in some ways things haven't changed because I still have to go to work, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever. So I still have that, 10 hours blocked off. So it's weird. It is kind of weird to adjust to being home that much,
Yep.
So.
Someone on the iPhone with their hat on. You, yes. Hi, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Alan,
That's
I gave the lecture last week.
That's right, Ellen. Awesome. Okay, go.
I'm painting. I paint all day. I'm working on a painting here. And I'm giving Zoom classes to my family. We paint together at least once or twice a week. We draw and paint, and it's really fun.
That's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
I also have to say that a lot of this stuff, being mindful and doing all these things, is WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers, is doing this also. That we have these virtual meetings, and all the meetings are geared to either food, activity, or mindfulness. And a lot of the members have brought up themselves things that they're doing to try to stay sane. And a lot of it has to do with going out for walks and reading. And somebody bought a word search book and is doing just mindless word search just to take up the time, or crossword puzzles, or even adult coloring books to keep themselves busy. So lots of stuff to do.
Right, and that's hard, for Weight Watchers, and I mean, people are joking about, are they ever going to fit into their clothes?
Right.
And what are we all talking about? Are recipes and cooking, because that's a good way to fill your day. So if you're trying to, monitor your weight, it becomes a bit of a challenge to do that.
Right. So a lot of the members are very thankful that they have this Zoom
Right.
forum so that they can check in and get back on track. So.
Right.
Can I say that, I've been doing like a lot of reading, and there's two authors that I mostly read. One of them is Louis L'Amour, who writes nothing but Westerns. And I enjoy his reading because it's all about one family called the Sacketts, Sacketts, but it's all about the family, and it's very interesting reading. The other one I read about is Mac Maloney, who has written everything about World War III. That is also very interesting because it's all about how the United States is not really united anymore, and how it is all broken up into different localities. And we have different Americans that are trying to protect what's left of it. And it's very interesting. Besides those two authors, then what I'll do is when I finish one author and I finish the Mac Maloney book, and then I just go into like a general book, and I have I'm doing all of my reading right here on the computer, so that I have books, and as I turn the pages flip over just like a real book, so that it's not like I have a book in hand or anything. It's just that I flip it and the page flips over, and it looks like a real book, but it keeps me busy and keeps me occupied and it keeps me thinking all the time.
That's great, Frank.
On
Jerry.
On Tuesdays and Thursdays from the Walpole Senior Center, when I was going there, and I was also doing some knitting.
Oh.
And you're looking at a male knitter, so don't.
Hey. That's awesome. That's great.
So the past few weeks, I've been working on my scarf, and I'm getting close to the end of my scarf. So now I have to learn, try and teach myself how to cast off, because I've never done that.
Right.
So I have to learn how to do that.
Well, that'll be the next step, Jerry. Next step.
And then besides that, and then I go through my mail daily because I get so much Democratic and Republican stuff in my email. So I have to clean out my emails daily. So, and then I also have a paint by number here on my computer, so that, like Alan had said, I'm also doing some painting, but rather than take a real paintbrush, I do it through the computer, and it's, some of these paintings really come out awesome, because as you use up the paints, and then the paints like disappear, and then you know, until you use up all your paints, and then everything is all done.
That's very nice.
So between the reading, my knitting, my emails, and the painting, it really keeps me busy all day.
That's awesome. Great. And
Ed, one time, excuse me for interrupting. I'd like to hear what Ed has to say.
Yes, Ed.
I was wondering if anyone's had any experience of this nature. I had a recent phone call with my sister in New York, and she mentioned to me, we were talking about the pandemic. She said, "Did you know that your mother had the pandemic in the Spanish flu and had to deal with it?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know that. No one told me that. But I want to tell you that I met someone many, many years ago who knew my father and said he had the Spanish flu at the same time. And she helped him to survive. I wonder if you've come across within your families anyone with those kinds of experiences."
I don't.
No.
I wonder if you have antibodies in your system as a result.
I hope so.
You know, people with antibodies are going to be the new superheroes, because they're the ones that are going to be allowed to go back to work and are going to be allowed to, you know, maybe fly planes, get on the planes, because, you know, hopefully they have some immunity to it. But that's very interesting. There's also, you know, very few people alive from the pandemic, but for people who survived it, that's a special category.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Roberta, so much. That was very, very interesting.
Can I just, before do I have 5 more minutes?
You do.
All right, I'll even make it 2 minutes. I do want to say, since I am a mental health professional, is that, you know, when coping mechanisms don't work, it is okay to think about branching and looking at for some support, some professional support. Some people, are finding that, if you've had some symptoms of depression or anxiety or some other, disorder, they may get worse during this time. And it's important to recognize that and not to feel that it's that you have to cope with this all on your own, or that your coping mechanisms by itself can help. That there may be some people who need to branch out and look for some professional services. And if you find that you're sleeping a lot, if you're not used to sleeping more, or not sleeping a lot, if your insomnia is really raging and you can't get it under control, if you're binge eating, or if you're binge shopping, or you're binge gambling, drinking more, all of these things could be sign that it's time to get some professional help. And the good news is that, if there's one good thing about the pandemic, is that the insurance companies are now allowing telemedicine and telehealth to be used. So before, the insurance companies would not agree to that. Now they are. So if somebody has been seeing a therapist, a lot of these therapists are now arranging for meetings through Zoom or through other kind of platforms. And your insurance company will recognize that. And if you don't have anyone, it's very easy to find a therapist by going to, you put in your zip code and you can say looking for psychologist or whatever your symptom is. And there are a lot of websites that come up, or you can check with your primary care physician, your healthcare provider, or your healthcare provider network. But, don't be afraid to recognize that some of us may need more than just some of the usual coping stuff that we need. And then this may be a time to get a little tweaking and some help. And it's also important not to feel stigmatized by that. Being a mental health professional, I know how people sometimes feel that there's still some stigma that they have to get into therapy or see a therapist or get some professional help, and there should be no stigma from that. So if all of the things that we talked about, and you're still feeling 6s and 7s, and you're not feeling yourself, and from the passage you need a little help, this is a time to do it and not to be embarrassed by it. So, by all means, feel that it's okay to look for some help. And as I say, the telemedicine platform really works. It's very amenable. The only problem is you might need to find some private places. They find that people, who have in families, they're in their bathrooms, they're in their cars, they're in their closets, so they can have some private time. But it can be done. And, not only are you kind of struggling through this, the therapists are also struggling. Many of them are going through the same thing and they're learning of this. So there's some camaraderie there. But in any event, I just wanted to leave that thought, is that, don't feel bad if, but with all of the above, you're still not feeling yourself, then by all means, branch out to look for some professional help. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really very interesting, and I'm sure everybody appreciated it. So kudos to
I, for one, really appreciate your talk, Roberta. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And so just as looking forward to next week, with Judy is going, Judy, I have to look on the screen.
I am too.
There you are. Oh, with Judy is going to give us some photography tips. I imagine that she'll be sharing some things on the screen, so we'll talk about that. And I imagine if you have a phenomenal photo that you take this week, and you want to share it, please do. So that might be a fun thing to do. So if you're out, yes, Judy.
One thing, not an aside, referring back to Roberta's bread, okay? Last week, the New York Times published a recipe for beer bread. I cut it out and I gave it to my daughter-in-law because it was so simple. By adding stale beer, you don't need yeast. And it's a very easy recipe, so just look it up.
Maybe you don't need sourdough starter that you have to feed every day for a week.
No, you just need flour and...
Oh, I'll look for that. Thanks, Judy.
Very simple.
Very good.
I did manage to snag some yeast on Amazon. And
really?
I made white bread. Yeah, I've been making breads like crazy.
I couldn't find it on Amazon, just for you to know. I'm just sharing.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. I tried on Amazon maybe 10 days ago and I couldn't find it. So
right. They told me I could get it. And then when I went to buy it, it said out of stock.
Right.
It's not the brand I'm used to, but it's fine.
All right. Well, happy times. I think as Roberta said, take advantage of each moment to say, where's the beauty in this moment? You know, where is the joy? Whether it be that you woke up in the morning or that you get outside and say, wow, the sun is out today, you know, or the trees are now blossoming in spite
Can
of
I
your.
tell you my beauty and my joy?
Yes.
My beauty and my joy is I'm working, thank goodness, and I'm working in my kitchen. And if you can see behind me, there's my son right there in the dining room. He's got his headphones on. Oops, he's waving. So that's where he's been. So my joy is that he's right here with me. So I can just nag him in person now. It's great.
I'm going to leave you with one bit of joy that I just found out. Well, I didn't just find out, but I'm at liberty to say today that I'm going to be a grandma again.
Hey.
Congratulations.
My daughter is going to have a baby, so there is joy in the world, and everything continues to continue.
Awesome.
So, see you all later, if not next week, and have a good week. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Yes, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day to everybody.
Mazel tov, Debbie.
Those of you that are mothers.
Thank you. And happy Mother's Day to all of us who have mothers.
Yes,
And stay safe.
that's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, everybody, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Roberta.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Roberta.
Natalie.
Roberta,
Thank you,
that was
Roberta.
awesome.
Yes.
Thanks
That was
a lot.
wonderful.
Oh,
Great.
thank you.
Really
Thank you.
was.
And can I say you look beautiful, Roberta?
You know what? It was so much fun to get dressed into something that I
Yes.
even put perfume on.
Oh, you smell good. Cindy, we'll work out this co-host thing another time.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'm
so
gonna
much,
find out
Roberta.
through Weight Watchers tonight. I have a meeting tonight. I'm gonna find out how to do that because
Okay.
they do it all the time.
Thank you, everybody. See you later.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.
ending the meeting.
Bye.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.